My name is Irene Cooper, 27 years old. For nearly a decade, I've worked as a licensed electrician in Kansas City. It's not glamorous work, but it's honest. Every day, I help keep homes, businesses, and hospitals running, and I've never been ashamed of earning a living with my hands. When I'm not working, you'll usually find me in my garage restoring vintage Harleys. They're expensive, time-consuming, and endlessly frustrating. But somehow, rebuilding old motorcycles has always made more sense to me than trying to understand people. 3 years ago, I met Nathan at Howl on the Moontown. I was celebrating my best friend Hannah's promotion. Nathan was there attending a birthday celebration with coworkers. We spent more than an hour talking about everything except our jobs. He asked thoughtful questions about my motorcycle projects, laughed at my stories from construction sites, and made me feel like being different wasn't something I needed to apologize for. For the first few months, I honestly believed I'd found someone special. Looking back, the warning signs were already there. The first came when I invited him to Hannah's annual barbecue competition. He smiled and asked, "Will there be normal people there?" I laughed because I assumed he was joking. Later, after spending an afternoon rebuilding an engine, I came inside covered in grease. Nathan looked at me with visible discomfort. "You really should change before anyone sees you." It sounded harmless. It wasn't. Little comments slowly became part of everyday life. He'd suggest different clothes before his company events. He'd hint that I should sound more professional around his coworkers. He never directly criticized my career, but somehow every compliment came with an invisible condition, as if being an electrician was acceptable only as long as nobody important noticed. 18 months into the relationship, his lease expired. My townhouse in Midtown was bigger, so moving in together seemed like the obvious decision. Love has a remarkable talent for disguising bad decisions as logical ones. The biggest problem wasn't Nathan. It was his circle of friends. 3 people who could insult someone while smiling warmly enough to deny they meant anything by it. Brittany led the group. Brooke could turn every conversation into a competition she somehow always won. Bianca specialized in comments so subtle they forced you to question whether you had actually been insulted. The first major incident happened during Nathan's birthday cookout. I'd spent 14 hours smoking brisket, started before sunrise, checked the fire every half hour. When everyone arrived, Brittany slowly walked around my smoker before smiling. "Oh, wow, this is so authentic." Brooke added, "My boyfriend usually books a reservation somewhere expensive, but this is definitely more hands-on." Then Bianca looked at Nathan. "Well, at least Irene's good with her hands." She smiled sweetly. "I'm sure that's useful." Everyone laughed. I smiled too, mostly because I didn't know what else to do. Later that evening, I finally asked Nathan if he'd noticed how disrespectful they had been. He barely looked up from his phone. "They're just joking." It didn't sound like a joke. "Irene, you're too sensitive." That sentence became a pattern. Whenever they insulted me, I was too sensitive. Whenever I defended myself, I was creating drama. The next warning came when Nathan met my parents. My father had retired after decades as a union electrician. My mother worked for the local school district. They welcomed Nathan with genuine warmth. Halfway through dinner, I noticed him texting beneath the table. For just a second, I saw the screen. A group chat. At Irene's family dinner. "This is the most working-class thing I've ever seen. Everything smells fried, LOL." My stomach dropped. A few minutes later, my mother offered him some of her homemade casserole to take home. Nathan smiled politely. "That's really sweet, but I'm watching my carbs." I knew he was lying. He'd eaten pasta 3 nights earlier. On the drive home, I finally confronted him. That wasn't fair to my mom. What wasn't? The texting, the comments. He sighed dramatically. "You're reading into everything." "No, I'm paying attention." "They're just different from what I'm used to." Different. That word echoed in my head long after we got home. Apparently, my family was different. My career was different. My entire life needed to be tolerated instead of respected. The turning point arrived at Hannah's housewarming party. Brittany made another comment about manual labor. Hannah looked directly at her. Funny how people who work with their hands seem to keep the world running while everyone else looks down on them. Silence filled the room. Later, Brooke bragged about how intellectually demanding marketing was. Hannah calmly asked, "So, your job is convincing people to buy things they don't need?" I laughed before I could stop myself. Nathan didn't. The drive home ended in another argument. He accused Hannah of embarrassing his friends. I reminded him that his friends had spent the entire evening insulting me. They were joking. So Hannah wasn't? He had no answer. From that point on, I found excuses to skip gatherings with his friends. Long workdays, motorcycle restorations. Anything was better than another evening pretending disrespect was humor. Hannah warned me one afternoon while helping me finish rebuilding my Harley. "They're training you." "What do you mean?" "They keep insulting you until defending yourself feels like the real problem." I wanted to disagree. Instead, I realized she was right. Then, Nathan finally received the promotion he'd worked toward for months, Senior Marketing Coordinator. I was genuinely proud of him. I suggested celebrating. My treat. I booked one of the nicest restaurants downtown. Private corner table, steaks, wine, dessert, whatever everyone wanted. Watching Nathan walk through those restaurant doors that evening, smiling proudly in a tailored black suit, I honestly believed this celebration might become the evening that repaired everything between us. Instead, it became the night that destroyed our relationship forever. The restaurant looked exactly the way I'd imagined it when I made the reservation. Soft lighting, quiet music, a corner table overlooking the city. For 5 whole minutes, I remembered why I'd fallen in love with Nathan. He smiled as he thanked me for organizing everything. He even reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Then, Brittany, Brooke, and Bianca walked in. The atmosphere changed before they even sat down. Brittany wore an outfit that practically announced its designer label from across the room. Brooke immediately began photographing the cocktails before anyone had taken a sip. Bianca scanned the restaurant with the confidence of someone convinced every stranger was admiring her. I ignored the feeling in my stomach. Tonight wasn't about them. Tonight was supposed to celebrate Nathan. The drinks arrived. Nathan talked excitedly about his promotion, his larger office, new responsibilities, and an upcoming corporate retreat in Denver. I listened with genuine pride. I'd watched him spend months chasing this opportunity. Seeing him happy honestly made me happy. For a brief moment, I believed Hannah had been wrong. Maybe tonight would finally be different. Then Brittany smiled. "So, Irene, here we go. Still fixing wires for a living?" I smiled politely. "Business has been great." "It must be nice having such a simple job," she continued while slicing into her shrimp cocktail. "Just connect this wire to that wire. Doesn't sound very stressful." I calmly replied, "Commercial electrical systems involve engineering plans, safety codes, load calculations, and troubleshooting. It's a little more complicated than plugging things in." "Oh, please," Brooke interrupted with a laugh. "It's not like you needed a college degree." Nathan stared into his drink, silent. Bianca leaned forward. "And what about those motorcycles?" "They're vintage Harley restorations." She laughed. Translation: you spend thousands of dollars rebuilding rusty junk. "They're investments," I answered, "and I enjoy restoring them." She smirked. Nathan, you could have dated someone with actual ambition." Brittany nodded. "Remember Daniel from that marketing conference? Real estate developer." Brooke smiled. "He would have fit your lifestyle so much better." I looked directly at Nathan. He gave an awkward little laugh. Nothing else. No objection. No defense. The conversation kept getting worse. Every joke had the same target: my career, my education, my family. Even the calluses on my hands somehow became entertainment. I honestly don't know what you two even talk about, Brooke said while cutting her steak. What does Nathan discuss with someone who never went into corporate life? Bianca added, probably has to explain everything using small words. The table exploded with laughter. Something inside me finally stopped trying to keep the peace. I slowly placed my knife and fork on the plate. The sound echoed louder than I expected. I looked at Nathan. I think that's enough. He sighed. Irene. They're just joking. No. They've spent this entire dinner insulting me. Brittany rolled her eyes. See? Sensitive. Bianca laughed. What are you going to do? Cry? I never took my eyes off Nathan. I was waiting for the man I'd spent 3 years loving to choose whether I mattered. He looked embarrassed, not because of what they'd said, because I'd interrupted dinner. Then he spoke. If you can't handle my friends being honest, he shrugged, just pay for your meal and leave. Everything stopped. Even the restaurant suddenly felt silent. I stared at him. Those weren't Brittany's words, or Brooke's, or Bianca's. Those were his. 3 years together, reduced to one sentence. Brittany giggled first, then Brooke, then Bianca. They honestly believed I'd apologize, that I'd stay, that I'd quietly pay the entire bill like every other time. Instead, I smiled. A strangely calm smile. That's actually a good idea. I reached into my purse, pulled out my wallet. My steak came to $42. With tax and tip, almost $60. I placed 3 $20 bills neatly beside my plate. This covers my dinner. Nathan blinked. Irene. Sit down. Don't be dramatic. I stood. Standing up for myself isn't dramatic. I picked up my keys. What was dramatic was spending 2 hours pretending humiliation counts as entertainment. Nobody laughed anymore. Other diners had begun watching. Even one of the servers slowed down while passing our table. Nathan finally stood. Irene. I didn't mean... No. You meant exactly what you said. I looked at all 4 of them. For 3 years, I've convinced myself I was imagining this. I wasn't. I nodded toward the money. My meal is paid for. The rest? I looked directly at Nathan. Is your celebration. Then I walked away. The hostess gave me a sympathetic smile as I reached the entrance. Behind me, I heard Brooke whisper, She'll be back. Bianca laughed. 5 minutes. I never turned around. Every step toward the parking garage felt lighter than the one before it. By the time I reached my truck, I realized something unexpected. I wasn't angry. I was relieved. For months, I'd been trying to earn respect from people who had already decided I wasn't worthy of it. Nothing I achieved would have changed their minds. Not another promotion, not more money, not another motorcycle restored perfectly. Because the problem had never been me. It was that I'd stayed long enough to let them convince me I deserved it. 10 minutes into the drive home, my phone rang. Nathan. Ignored. Another call. Ignored. Then the messages started. Very funny. Come back. Irene, stop acting childish. The bill is almost $500. Get back here right now. I kept driving. Reality was finally catching up with them. They'd ordered expensive appetizers, premium steaks, cocktails, desserts, wine. They had assumed I'd quietly cover everything. Now they were discovering exactly how expensive disrespect could become. By the time I reached my townhouse, Nathan had called 17 times. I didn't answer once. Instead, I packed a duffel bag with enough clothes for a week. Then I drove straight to Hannah's house. She opened the door before I even knocked twice. One look at my bag, one look at my face, and she quietly smiled. "You finally left him." I nodded. "Yeah." She stepped aside. "I've had your room ready for about 2 years." For the first time in months, I slept without wondering what insult tomorrow would bring. The next morning, I woke to the smell of coffee and the sound of my phone vibrating non-stop on Hannah's kitchen counter. I'd slept harder than I had in months. No walking on eggshells, no wondering whether another gathering with Nathan's friends would end with me becoming the punchline. Just silence. When I finally picked up my phone, the notifications kept scrolling. 23 missed calls. More than 40 text messages. Most of them came from Nathan. "I can't believe you embarrassed me. Everyone at the restaurant was staring. You left me with almost a $500 bill. You owe me half." Then his friends joined in. Brittany sent a message nearly the length of a novel explaining how I'd financially manipulated everyone into believing I intended to pay. Brooke simply wrote, "Nathan deserves better than someone this immature." Bianca somehow managed to outdo both of them. She sent me a Venmo request. $150. Reason: emotional distress plus Uber home. I stared at the screen before bursting into laughter. Hannah looked over from the stove. "What?" I handed her my phone. She read it once, then laughed so hard she nearly spilled her coffee. "I've officially seen everything. They insult you for 3 years, then bill you because you finally leave." I took screenshots of every message, not because I planned to respond, because something told me they might become useful later. Nathan kept calling. I ignored every single attempt. Around lunchtime, someone started pounding on Hannah's front door. Not knocking, pounding. We looked through the peephole. Nathan, standing beside Brittany, Brooke, and Bianca. Apparently, they had decided to bring the entire committee. Nathan shouted loud enough for half the neighborhood to hear. "Irene! We know you're in there! This has gone far enough!" Hannah calmly unlocked the door. She didn't open it all the way, just enough to step outside. "What exactly do you people want?" Brittany crossed her arms. "Tell Irene she owes Nathan the money from dinner." Hannah blinked. "Let me make sure I understand. You spent the entire evening insulting her, told her to leave, and now you're upset because she left?" Brooke rolled her eyes. "You're missing the point." "No," Hannah smiled. "I think you're the ones missing it." Nathan finally stepped forward. "I just want to talk." "No," Hannah replied. "You want her to apologize." "Those aren't the same thing." Bianca pointed toward the house. "She's hiding." Hannah's smile disappeared. "No. She's recovering." "There's a difference." Nathan sighed dramatically. "This is between Irene and me." Hannah folded her arms. "Then maybe you shouldn't have brought 3 spectators." For nearly 15 minutes, they argued on the front porch. I stayed inside, listening, watching, realizing something strange. For the first time in years, I didn't feel responsible for fixing the situation. Eventually, Hannah looked directly at Nathan. "You're trespassing. I'm asking you politely to leave. If you refuse, I'll call the police." Something in her voice convinced them she wasn't bluffing. They left, but they weren't finished. By evening, my phone started buzzing again. This time, it wasn't texts. It was Facebook. Nathan had written an emotional post describing how I'd abandoned him during the celebration dinner after promising to pay. Brittany shared it. Brooke added dramatic captions about women who can't handle successful men. Bianca accused me of humiliating Nathan because I was jealous of his promotion. Then they tagged me. They tagged my family, even my employer. Within an hour, my mother called. "Honey, there's something strange online." "I know. I'll explain." She listened quietly while I told her everything. When I finished, there was a long silence. Then she asked only one question. "Why didn't you leave sooner?" I didn't have an answer. Later that night, my younger sister called. "I already handled it." "What?" I replied. She'd found screenshots I'd sent months earlier. Comments, messages, little insults I'd never shown anyone else. She posted them beneath Nathan's Facebook story, one after another. Screenshots of Brittany mocking my family, messages about my career, comments calling me working class entertainment. The reactions changed almost immediately. People who knew both of us began asking uncomfortable questions. Someone from the restaurant commented that they remembered hearing Nathan tell me to leave. Another guest remembered seeing me place cash on the table before walking out. Nathan's story started falling apart. Then Hannah joined the comments. She simply wrote, "Funny how everyone calls Irene dramatic now, but nobody remembers who spent 3 years humiliating her." Hundreds of people reacted. The conversation shifted overnight. By Monday morning, the sympathy Nathan expected wasn't arriving. Instead, people wanted answers. That same afternoon, I drove back to the townhouse while Nathan was at work. I still had my key. I still paid half the rent. Legally, I had every right to enter. The moment I stepped inside, something felt wrong. The living room was a disaster. Takeout containers covered the kitchen. Wine bottles sat on the counter. Music speakers had been moved. Then I noticed 2 official notices taped near the entrance. Noise complaints. 2 of them. I sighed. Then I walked toward the entertainment center. My PlayStation was gone. I searched the bedroom, found it hidden inside Nathan's closet. That irritated me. But what happened next made my heart stop. I opened the garage. Several of my professional electrical tools were missing. Not cheap hardware store equipment. Thousands of dollars worth of tools I used every single day to earn my living. My voltage tester, my multimeter, specialty conduit tools, wire equipment, gone. I grabbed my phone, opened Facebook Marketplace. My stomach dropped. There they were. Every single missing tool, listed under Nathan's account, priced to sell quickly. Then I saw something even worse. A Craigslist listing. 1979 Harley Project, $3,000 OBO. The motorcycle I'd spent 8 months restoring, worth at least 4 times that amount. Nathan wasn't just trying to punish me anymore. He was trying to sell my future. At that exact moment, I stopped thinking like a heartbroken girlfriend. I started thinking like someone preparing evidence. And Nathan had absolutely no idea that his biggest mistake wasn't telling me to leave the restaurant. His biggest mistake was touching something that legally belonged to me.